This world doesn't need a hero. It needs a professional.
I decided to make today's video on the School of the Griffin. So this school is probably the closest school I can think of to this channel, considering that I named it after one of the most famous witches from that school. And that witcher is, of course, George of Kagan. And we'll get into his story a bit later in the video, but first of all, I just want to cover the basics of this school. So to begin with, the Griffin School is basically a set of witches that appeared in the Witcher graphic novels. They also appeared in the books, very lightly. It was mentioned by Leo Bonhart that he displays his personal trophies, and that is shown that he has a cat medallion, a griffin medallion, and a wolf medallion. So they're definitely canon to the books, the School of the Griffin, you know, unlike, say, some of the other schools, but they're not really shown at all. They're most covered, surprisingly, in the games, and that's just because of certain Witcher stories, and the fact you actually get to see the armour and know what they wear. So to begin with, let's talk about their armour. So the School of the Griffin wear medium armour, a bit like the School of the Wolf, except from this armour actually increases the intensity of signs, or at least it's supposed to. So basically what this can tell us is that it implies that this school, you know, their main source of fighting, I suppose you could say, was magic, or they've specialised in it, say, much more than some of the other schools. So it's also thought that these witches use two swords, and we don't have a lot of info on whether or not they did, but we can just assume they did, considering there's diagrams of those swords in the games. But if you look at this picture here, this is the only illustration we have of the Witcher George, other than obviously my YouTube picture, but this is an actual illustration of him. So it's also thought that the School of the Griffin witches possess high standards of social etiquette, compared to the other schools, that is, because if you think about schools like, I don't know, the School of the Wolf, or the School of the Viper, you know, or the School of the Cat. The School of the Cat are basically assassins, and they're kind of creepy, I suppose you could say, if you meet them. The School of the Wolf are a little bit kind of to the point. You can imagine that the School of the Griffin, just based on the fact that there's the Witcher George, who is based off St. George, is probably quite, I suppose you could say they're quite posh, only in comparison to other witches. So we can only assume this because of it was mentioned in the Dragon Slayer's treasure hunt quest, but this might have actually just been referring to the Witcher George especially, but just judging on the fact that if you think about the basic attitude of each School of the Wolf Witcher, they're all pretty much the same, except from obviously Lambert. But they all kind of have the same mannerisms, as in, you know, they're all quite, I suppose you could say, they're quite nervous of other people, but obviously Geralt's changed over time. So you can imagine that a lot of School of the Wolf Witches could have been raised in this way. So that's all I want to say on the School of the Griffin as a whole. We don't know where they're based, just because it's a bit difficult to pin a lot of this stuff down. We can assume they're probably a northern school, potentially. You know, maybe they could be up in the mountains somewhere, you never know, just based on their name. It's a bit difficult to determine where they're from because there's no actual info on that, but maybe they'll release it one day. So before I move on to the Witcher George, who is obviously a big part of this video, I want to talk about another Witcher from this school. And I first heard of him in the Blood and Wine DLC, and you'll probably have heard of him from there too. And this is Jerome, or Jerome Moreu. I'm not sure, I don't know how to say his second name. That is an unbelievably cool second name, but... So this is a guy that's actually from Toussaint, who's taken as the School of the Griffin. So let me tell you his story. In 1087, his dad, Thomas Moreu, was saved from monsters thanks to a witcher, and when asked what he wanted as a reward, the witcher then stated the law of surprise. So this turned out to be Thomas's son, Jerome, who was then taken to the School of the Griffin to become a witcher. By 1121, Jerome was a veteran witcher and had more than a few contracts already under his belt. When he was offered a very lucrative contract in Toussaint, where he was paid even before he got there. However, when he did arrive and met the contract giver, he soon learned who the real benefactor was, Thomas Moreu, his own father. When this was revealed, Jerome flew into a rage and ran off to confront him. When he arrived at Mont Crane, Thomas explained to Jerome that he had been researching witcher mutations since 1102 in an attempt to find a cure for his son and turn him back into a normal man. However, Jerome had no love for his father and thus refused to undergo the treatment, but his father refused to take no for an answer and, using a paralyzing spell, transported his son to his laboratory and sealed him in a room that could only be accessed through a portal, believing with time his son would come around. Jerome wasn't very keen on submitting himself to the experiment, but his father just did them anyway. Thomas supplied many mutagens in hopes of making Jerome human again, but unintentionally enhanced the witcher mutations rather than eliminate them. However, this didn't actually come without its costs, and this brought Jerome to the brink of death, and on some occasions, but rose again stronger and faster than before. So in the end, Thomas gave up, coming to terms about his son being a witcher until the end of his days, and then decided to go back to Lydia. So we don't actually know what happened to Jerome. We can assume he probably died just as a witcher. You know, you actually go to this laboratory and can enhance yourself. You could do that in Tucson, it's quite cool. But we don't actually know what happened to Jerome. We can imagine he probably died because, as we know, no Witcher dies in his bed. But it's quite a sad story overall. We know that's the case with every Witcher though, you know. It's very unlikely that someone will willingly become a Witcher. It's mostly just, you know, the lore of surprise a lot of the time. Well, most of the time, I'd say. Even Ciri, on some level, if you've read the books, was from the lore of surprise a little bit later on. So now we're going to move on to the last part of the video, and that is to talk about the legendary Witcher George. And that's not my words, that is literally the words of everything. He is a legend within the Witcher universe. He is shown in The Witcher 1 and much more shown in The Witcher 3. In Kaer Morhen there is actually a painting of him as a dragon slayer, which is pretty cool that he's in from that early on. So I'm going to read over a little basic biography of him, and then I'm going to read over some confessions and his journal. So, George of Kagan, also known as the Dragon Slayer, was a legendary Witcher from the School of the Griffin. George was hired by prefects of Gors Velen, who were concerned about the latest ship casualties in Velen near the mysterious lighthouse. When he investigated, he learned that the accidents were caused by local villagers who made fires on cliffs in order to crash and then loot all the arriving ships. After he explained the situation to the prefects, he accepted a contract on a green dragon that was scorching nearby villages. George left in a hurry and forgot a diagram for his new silver sword that he had to order since his old sword was destroyed. In the end, the Witcher managed to slay the dragon, but in doing so was seriously injured. Lying in agony, he was robbed of his other diagrams by the locals. He was eventually buried in Dragon Slayer's grotto in Velen. So that's just a very, very basic overview of what happened. You know, he found a green dragon, you can see in the picture, he killed it, he lost his silver sword, which is, I suppose, why he only has one sword then. So they did use two swords. We can confirm they used two swords. And then the people from Velen nicked all his diagrams, then that's where you find them throughout the Witcher games. So here is a journal entry of the Witcher George, and this is basically his confession, or it's titled The Witcher George's Confession. And this letter can be found on a skeleton in the castle Hindfold in Velen. I, the undersigned George of Kagan, a Witcher by trade, testify as follows. While travelling through Velen, I received summons to provide professional testimony in the matter of an accused, Bartoslav of Lovefield. The Bartoslav stands accused of causing several shipwrecks near the lighthouse, which it is his duty to keep. Ships led astray by errant signals from his lighthouse have repeatedly smashed against rocks near the shore, and the lighthouse keeper is held to be responsible for this state of affairs. During the trial, Bartoslav testified that he was diligent in the fulfillment of his duties and that the accidents were caused by night wraiths deceiving sailors with their false glow. Having investigated the area, I can testify that I found no trace of night wraith activity. There are likewise no signs of noon wraiths, mamoons, urn nymphs, or any other spectres in the habit of misleading weary travellers journeying by foot, sea, or horse. I did, however, find the catastrophe's true cause. They were not at the fault of the night wraiths blamed by the accused, but neither were they the fault of the lighthouse keeper himself. The accidents were caused by local hooligans who have taken to lighting fires on the hill at night and then robbing the ships that subsequently wreck upon the shore. I was put on their trail by Bartslav's son, who showed me the ashes from the misleading fires. My testimony shows that the lighthouse keeper, Bartslav of Lovefield, is not guilty of the crimes of which he stands accused, and should be freed. I also humbly ask for the bailiff to be put the lighthouse keeper and his family under his protection. For in light of the revelations, Bartslav's son led me to discover there will surely be certain parties with cause for vengeance. I cannot undertake the task of protecting the family myself, for I have accepted a contract to kill a dragon said to be lurking atop the Crookback Hills, and so I must return there, post-haste to kill the beast and complete my task. Signed, George of Kagan, Witcher. So that's basically what happened, I suppose you could say, in a more Witcher George type thing. I guess it's a bit weird because my channel's The Witcher George and I'm reading as if I'm The Witcher George. But yeah, that's basically what happened. So this is the next part of the story, and this will basically it's a little bit later on. I'm gonna skip a bit of the start because I've just read that to you then. Seems a dragon was raving the countryside is a lower priority than blocked trade routes. Luckily, I was able to solve the riddle of the lone lighthouse quickly and raced off after the dragon. I learned that the peasants from the ravaged villages had taken shelter in the elven catacombs under Lake Windermere. Wise. Yet they were not wise enough to bring firewood, and so warmed themselves by burning elven manuscripts. It aches my heart to think what knowledge about the older folk went up in those flames. At least a few of the manuscripts survived, including some highly interesting sketches of armour. Yet, enough about that. Eyewitnesses have reported ashen scales, height at haunches, 2 fathoms length, 5 fathoms, addendum estimated weight approximately 14 quintals, able to maintain a high temperature in its bellows, dragon lungs, for longer than a quarter hour. Conclusion, we are dealing with the green dragon. commencing hunt. So you know what happens after that. That's basically what he did. He found out that there was a dragon after this whole lighthouse situation. He went, killed the dragon, but got killed subsequently himself. And you might be thinking, wait, but in the Witcher's code it says that they don't kill dragons. Why would he do that? And it's basically because the Witcher, I think you could say they don't hunt dragons, right? And I know he says commencing hunt, but they don't go out of their way to find a dragon to kill. But if it's actually terrorizing villages, and if it's actually killing people and it needs to be stopped, then they will kill the dragon. That is just part of the Witch's job. Their job is to kill monsters, and if this dragon, by personality I suppose you could say, is a monster, just as when humans are monsters in the Witcher universe, then they will kill them. And besides, the Witcher code thing is a little bit more of, I suppose you could say it's more of a, it's basically an excuse. So if the Witchers don't feel like doing something, they could say, well, in my code it says I can't do that, which then basically allows them to turn down a job without insulting whoever they've turned down a job from. So finally, I want to finish this video with a little journal entry, which is Geralt's experience of finding about this Witcher George, and I suppose you could say in a way finding more about the school of the Griffin. Geralt came across evidence of the legendary Witcher George's equally legendary equipment, having heard many tales of this gear's extraordinary traits. Geralt decided to investigate. Geralt managed to acquire the diagrams for all the items that had once been used by the Witcher George. While doing so, he discovered many previously unknown facts about the famous Griffin School Dragon Slayer. During one of his numerous adventures, Geralt got his hands on a map covered with strange markings. He quickly deduced that they indicated the locations of hidden Witcher caches, and, intrigued by the chance of discovering long-lost crafting schematics, he set out to find them. Geralt found all the caches marked on the map, and recovered the crafting schematics contained therein. With these in hand, he could add life-saving improvements to his combat gear. He did not know how many more such caches remained undiscovered in the world, but hoped one day he would have the chance to find more. So, what's actually interesting about this entire thing is that the Witcher George managed to kill a dragon with a steel sword. And there's a lot of debate over whether steel swords would be better against dragons because their scales are very hard and silver swords are quite fine compared to steel swords. And even though, you know, Witchers don't class dragons as monsters, so would a silver sword have any more effect? But I suppose you could say that there's other reasons. For example, when you fight a dragon in The Witcher 2, you use your silver sword because the steel sword barely does anything against it. So the Witcher George managed to kill the dragon with a steel sword and probably took a lot of damage in the process because that would have taken him not only a long time but a lot of skill, and he probably would have got attacked a lot, which is hence why he died. But us Witcher Georges will continue his legacy as George of Kagan, and you know what? We've got to start something. He has got to become a Gwent card, guys. The Witcher George deserves to be a Gwent card. You know, we've got so much School of the Wolf stuff, which is obviously why, but you know what? I think we need some more schools in there. And after finishing these School of the Wolf videos, I want to thank everybody for watching. And I just want to say that I hope everybody who's watched these videos sticks around. I do loads and loads of lore videos. It's not just a School of the Wolf, and I could come up with even more ideas. For example, I have my Witcher Monster series, which is quite a fun thing to do. You'll learn more about the monsters. I'd like to talk more about dragons in future. I'd like to do individual character profiles on The Witcher, however I may leave The Witcher George out just because I think I've fully covered him in this video. I might do a proper speculation video on him at some point in the future. And one of the biggest things that honestly interests me in this school is the fact that they use signs the most. I mean, I wonder if they potentially had abilities that the other Witchers didn't have in signs. You know, they probably did. You know, we see Geralt's Igni, that you can get the ability to basically turn it into almost a little flamethrower. Imagine what the School of the Griffin could do. They might be able to turn it into fireballs or something cool. But, you know, we'll have to find out in future, because they're definitely going to return to The Witcher, as they all said, and we're going to hold them to that. Yeah, so after finishing all these schools videos, I think that each of the main people that I've covered in these schools, if they're not already a Gwent card, they should definitely turn them into Gwent cards. But anyway, if you like this video, be sure to click the like button, as it's really cool to know if you like this sort of thing. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. I also wanted to mention that this is not the end of Witcher schools in a way. I'm going to do character profiles on each individual Witcher, and then that'll be part of like larger videos. For example, I haven't fully covered the School of the Wolf, and I know that. I want to do videos on Geralt, Vesemir, Eskel, Lambert, tell you about all their history. Same with the School of the Griffin Witches that we might know of, if any more turn up. School of the Bear, School of the Viper, you know, School of the Manticore. But anyway, I will see you all later. Have an awesome week, guys, and I hope you enjoyed the video. You thought it was the end, didn't you? Well, not yet, because I've still got to do one more thing, and that is thank all the Patreon pledges. You guys are honestly amazing, and I'm sure a lot of you probably found my channel through these videos, and I hope everybody sticks around. You guys are so cool that you've managed to actually not only watch my videos, but you've also donated. So, in the eyes of me and this channel, you guys are all Grandmasters. And you know, there's usually only one Grandmaster, but you know what? We're gonna have all of us. We're all Grandmasters. You guys are awesome. Thank you for donating so much. If anybody is watching this video and they think, oh, I want to donate too, then check down the description. Thank you guys so much for donating. I hope that you will forever be solidified in these videos by being, you know, at the end of it. So I'll see you all later. Have an awesome time, guys. Goodbye.